Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to some. This is Johnny B. And today we're actually going to go over some of the things that I noticed. There's people that believe because we don't believe in their idea of what leftist ideology is, that we actually are just uninformed. That would be a sad mistake. I have been studying about leftist ideology for a long time, from Karl Marx to Herzl to to understanding Herbert Marcuse and Erich Fromm, and understanding people like Jacques Derrida and Michel Foucault, and even the longtime philosopher in France, Jacques Lacan, and even the new ones as well. So it would be a mistake to sit there and think that we don't understand what's been going on. And to understand what the way I think it, it's because I break it down, and I endlessly break it down. Just keep breaking it down. One of the starting points I tend to go at, and it doesn't have to be the beginning, it's a starting point I always go at, is around 1968, during the French Revolution. This was the time that Herbert Marcuse was actually writing his books and his manuals. And in 1968, he produced a manual called Critical Theory. In America, we know it as identity politics and political correctness. We have seen that in almost everything we've done, in almost everything. Okay, let me give you an example of identity politics that was used just not too long ago. In America, in Washington, D.C., there was a bunch of high school boys standing in front of Capitol Hill with MAGA hats on. Do you remember that? And then there was an Indian man who walked up to him with a drum and said, "Ay." So what happened was, initially the media ran with it, and they started using identity politics. Well, identity politics has even broken up into something called intersectionality, and we'll go over that a little bit later, but right now let's just talk about the identity politics. The intersectionality that he had, supposedly, was he was a vet. He was a man not just of color, but he was indigenous. He was an American Indian. And 3, ageism. He was elderly. So the biggest of those intersectionalities then is the fact that he was indigenous. You must believe this man, no matter what he said. What you find out is that this man was a Marine. He served during Vietnam, but he never was in Vietnam. You know why? Because he was in the brig for trying to go AWOL on 2 different occasions. He was a pussy. Okay? He was a left-wing activist. Okay? Which is what I find often with left-wing activists. They often lie. It's part of who they are in order to get what they want. I always say, if you want to know the truth, never listen to a Democrat, because they have a mantra. They will lie, cheat, steal, defame, demean, degrade, deceive, maim, and or kill in order to win. Because it's all about power with them. So they will deceive people left and right, up and down, until you believe it. And if you don't believe it, then we'll just keep repeating it until you do believe it. Okay? That's what I have found over my recent studies of the Democratic Party. And they use identity politics. Now, the intersectionality, this was written by Kimberly Crenshaw in 1992, a black woman that was trying to state that black women, because they have 2 intersectionalities, have it more difficult than somebody who's a black male. So she was one of these people that actually created the word intersectionality. But what people didn't realize is, where does the intersectionality start? Where does it end? Who has more points? So, who has more points, a black woman or a gay Jew? Who has more points, a dismembered Mexican or a transgendered black woman? Okay, so they've fought within themselves, and the part of socialism that's amazing to me is they try to tell everyone that everyone's going to be equal, but in that equality are these people that are actually fighting for the most oppression. That way they can say, we win. So you win the intersectionality wars by being the most oppressed, that's why everyone's always angered all the time. That's why everyone's always upset all the time. They're never happy. They're never satisfied with life. Okay? So this is the intersectionality. Now, going back to identity politics, they never believed the boys initially. Why? They were Catholic. They were white males. They lacked intersectionality points. Political correctness. It's horseshit. Okay? And once bigger videos came out, then you realized, just as always, the media is full of shit. They ran with it. Okay? They ran with it. Okay? And so this was part of Herbert Marcuse's release in 1968. In 1969, he also believed that people like Freud were Sabbationists. He was a Sabbatinist. Sabbatinism, in short, means Jewish law in reverse, but that doesn't really mean anything to anybody. What it really means is, let's take everything that we have perceived as perverse, everything that we have perceived as immoral, everything that we have perceived as unholy and sinful, and what we need to do is reverse it so that those things will later become normalized and become holy. And there's a scale. There's a scale. They had to break down the door with homosexuality. So in the 70s, they pushed it with the activism. In the 80s, they pushed it. Okay? You may or may not believe in the fact that AIDS virus was actually pushed by these globalists, and in Hollywood as well, and that's why they started making these really sad movies of straight white men beating the crap out of transgendered people, and so you got emotional. Then they tried to do something, they started going after and wanting things like their day. We need a gay parade. We need a gay day, a homosexual day, all these things, right? In 1991, Simon LeVay did a study on the hypothalamus. And he was hired by George H.W. Bush after his introduction into the New World Order. By the way, do you remember when the introduction of the New World Order speech was? You're going to find this very odd. I want you to all look it up on YouTube, and you're all going to go, it was September 11th, 1991. I want you to write in the box why you think that date I just told you seems odd. September 11th, 1991. George H.W. Bush gets up in front of Congress and tells everybody that we're going to start pursuing the New World Order. So as you can see, it's not just Democrats. It was a group of globalists that were controlling a uniparty. In 1991, then, he went after trying to create his own facts on homosexuality. So the first thing he did was he hired Simon LeVay. He was a neuroscientist, and Simon LeVay tried to do a study, and everyone caught him in his bullshit. He said, the hypothalamus is smaller on gay people, therefore it's genetic, therefore you're born with it. And then people realized there was pretty much bullshit, because everyone that was dying with AIDS, their brain was shrinking. Okay? All right? The brain was shrinking. All right? So, all right. The brain was shrinking. Anyway, So he did only, what, 19 people. So his case study was small. So they're like, oh my God, they threw him out. That's just like, come on, you're done. And he was gay. So Bush doesn't get reelected. In comes the next president, which is William Jefferson Clinton, also a globalist. And he decides to hire in 1992, late 1992, early 93, a man by the name of Dean Hamer, who at that time was a closeted homosexual. No one knew he was homosexual till much later. And Dean Hamer then comes out and says the XQ28 genetic marker on the 22nd chromosome is the reason that everyone was born gay. The problem is that study to this day has never been replicated or duplicated, and nobody wants to replicate or duplicate those studies, because if they do try, there will be activist groups all over your ass, and people will call you a bigot, a racist, a homophobe, all that crap, right? Especially a homophobe, right? No one wants to go after those studies. Dean Hamer almost got arrested. That's how fraudulent his studies were. Why was that study ever approved? And why did it automatically assume that that was the study that meant homosexuality was genetic? Okay, here's the thing. Now we're going to go back a little bit. Over the last, when you start going into defining what homosexuality, they had to make sure they had to go over years and years and years to make sure they kept they're defining it so that it was no longer considered what? A mental disorder. So they were able to do that, and then they went after the laws. Now they were able to kick in the door. Once they kicked in the door, then what? What happened after that? What was the main purpose of getting all of that? To do what? To get a minor classification. Once they got a minor classification, then in what, 2013? The SCOTUS gave them what they really wanted, a major classification. So homosexuality in our world now is a major classification. They broke down the door. But what did that do? It opened up the door for everything else. It opened up the door for everything else. For atheism. It opened up the door for being anti-Christian. It opened up the door for postmodernist bullshit subjective science. Because they went after it. They did. They sat there and they said, are you telling us God really wouldn't want us to go to heaven? We were born this way. You want to talk about political correctness? Try mentioning what I did on national TV. See if they get fired. That's how strong the activist groups are for the LGBT community. That's how big. You get it? All right. Now, you're starting to get this. You're starting to get it. People are like, well, yeah, but I have a son and he's gay. Well, we went over that. See, from the ages of 4 to the ages of 14, the hardwiring of your brain happens. And people say, yeah, but my husband's a Marine and I'm a nurse and we're Christian. It doesn't matter. How many hours a day do you really spend with your kids at that time? How many hours a day do these schools and preschools spend? Are you seeing what they're doing in preschools now? They're bringing in little transgender people going, we got 2 daddies and 2 mommies. And you see, yeah, who here wants to be a drag queen too? Woo! And everyone's raised, I do. You know, yeah. It is a purposeful attempt at trying to create sabbatinism. So homosexuality is the first step in the door as they start to go up, and then so Obama does. He creates that in the laws as well. That's part of it. Ideological subversion? Don't believe me. I want you to check out an 1.5-hour video by Yuri Bezmenov. He will tell you it is to try to create these sexual cults, he calls them. Because they didn't know any of this stuff about transgenderism when they started writing this stuff. Okay? Try to deplete the military. They also tried to hurt the military. So what was one of the ways? Don't ask, don't tell. And then all of a sudden he also allowed transgenderism in the military as well. And in 2017, the Democrats also tried to make sure that if you're in the military that we would pay for your surgeries. Try to create a society of feminized males, emasculated men, not patriotic. All part of ideological subversion. There's 4 steps of ideological subversion. Demoralization stage, destabilization stage, crisis, then normalization stage. Okay? I know them all. All right. So the Sabbatinism has a scale. So if they can get transgenderism, what do you think's next, people? Pedophilia. You got it. So as they start introducing all of these different types of genders, by the way, that's Erich Fromm. Erich Fromm, also a founding member of the cultural Marxist school called the Frankfurt School. He started with Herbert Marcuse and Max Horkheimer and Theodor Adorno. Okay? He was with them. He said you cannot be in love if you're in a capitalist society. The only way to love is in a socialist society. He is full of shit. What he also said was that something you hear to this day. To this day. He said you cannot say that genders is innate. He says it's a social construct. It's bullshit. It is part of cultural Marxism to destroy the family unit. The 4 basic concepts of Marxism: destroy the family unit, destroy Christianity, take away privatized land, and steal a nation. Basic concepts of Marxism. Now, people often tell me, well, that's an economics, so why do you even talk about cultural Marxism? You don't know what you're talking about. I absolutely do when I know what I'm talking about. Socialism is the economic platform, as well as political platform, that connects to communism, which is the political platform, as well as the cultural aspect of the very same socialism. They're connected by an ideology known as cultural Marxism. I know exactly what I'm talking about. Oh, we don't want socialism. We want socialist Democrats. Yeah, look under the definition of Bolshevism. That's what they were called. Bolsheviks were known as democratic socialists of Russia. And then they later killed hundreds of millions of people as communist Russia, the USSR. See, what these people are trying to do is they constantly deceive, and what they're looking to do is lie to you at all times. So 1968, revolution happened. French revolutionaries, we're going to turn this country and we're going to turn this world around. We're going to get rid of the Enlightenment period and we're going to start postmodernism. To hell with science. To hell with objectivism. To hell with Christianity. We want feminism. Early 70s, the Equal Rights Amendment. God, Rockefeller actually said we love that movement. We get to tax women and we get to further indoctrinate their children. Mwah! We love that movement. 2 more years we can indoctrinate their child. Are you kidding me? They loved it. So postmodernism. 2 + 2 = 5. No, it isn't. Yes, it does. Because we say it does. Postmodernism. 1st, 2nd, and 3rd place only get a trophy. Nuh-uh. How about my 9th place child? They want a ribbon too. Participation. They get their feelings hurt. Postmodernism. Everyone must be a victim. But in order to be a victim, you have to have someone who is victimizing you. Well, what better way than to blame straight, white, old men? So they create the rules because of intersectionality. And we're going to go over that. Again, we're going to have an intersectionality one. Intersectionality, they're all fighting. And the people they were kicking out were black males. That was until they said, oh, our one intersectionality point is so strong because we have been victims of slavery for 400 years. And then there was also another black sect called themselves the Black Hebrew Israelites. Well, we've been actually victimized for 2,000 years. All right. In other words, they're trying to get their head back in the game of intersectionality by saying we are the most victimized people in the entire world. So even though we have one intersectionality point, it doesn't matter. Ours beats everybody. Okay? That's all it is. So they create the rules. That's why when they said there is such thing as white supremacy and white privilege, how do you get white privilege when Michael Jordan's worth $500 million? Well, money is excluded. What? What? Money and power are excluded? So somebody like LeBron James is excluded just because he's black? That's right. Nice. So you make up the rules and we're supposed to follow this shit? That's right. No, I'm not buying it. The only people that buy this shit are the people listening to this left-wing media crap. So they hear it all the time. Yesterday, I want to hear, remember I told you that they try to steal terminology. What was the first thing that they did when President Trump signed the veto? He said, Mr. President Trump, did you hear about these white supremacists? Right-wing white supremacists rising all over the world. And he goes, I don't think so. They're not right-wing white supremacy, okay? You find out that guy's manifesto, he was hardly right-wing. I'm going to tell you now, and I'm going to have you listen to me. The left fights with the left more than the right will ever fight with the left, and there's a reason why. Because they need 100% totalitarianism. They need 100% collectivism. In other words, you will have fascists fight with Nazism. You'll have Nazis fight with Marxists of other venues such as progressives, modern day progressives, new progressives, Maoists. They're all looking at globalists. Okay? All right? Hillary Clinton, she's a capitalist. No, she's a crony capitalist. That bitch wanted to take all your money. She didn't give a shit about the modern, ordinary person. She didn't give a crap about the ordinary person. She only cared about her little tiny elite crowd. Okay? I told you they steal terms. Okay? Now, I threw in a lot here. A lot. And this is done on purpose. Because this is what my podcasts are all about. This will not be what most of my YouTubes are about, but this is what my podcasts are about. Because I want to educate people. As I open up my own website, we're going to be educating people step by step by step by step. So that people can literally understand what the hell is going on with our society. Even as left-wing ideology and propaganda is thrown at you on a minute-by-minute basis. You're going to be able to pick it up, lickety-split. Okay? Peace out, guys.